This is BBC World News. Now Hard Talk with Zainab Badawi.
Welcome to Hard Talk with me, Zainab Badawi. The United Nations says there is a major humanitarian crisis in northern Iraq. It's more than a week since Iraqis, especially minorities like the Yazidis, fled their homes after jihadists stormed their towns and villages, reportedly killing hundreds. There have been eyewitness accounts of people beheaded, of whole families buried alive. Now thousands are stranded in barren, hot and dry mountainous regions. Many have died from dehydration and lack of food. My guest today is Masroor Baarzani, Head of Intelligence and Security in Iraq's autonomous Kurdish region. Is it the Kurds who can rescue the state of Iraq? And how much outside help do they need to defeat the jihadists of the so-called Islamic State? Masroor Baarzani in Erbil, welcome to Hard Talk. How surprised are you by the gains that the jihadists have made?
We are very surprised, in fact. We've seen a very rapid growth of the ISIS since they started fighting in Syria. And then rapidly, they grew to a much larger organization. In fact, I can tell you today, we are dealing with a state of terrorists, not just an organization. They grew in number, they are controlling a much larger territory, and they have much more and better weapon today. And the defeat of the Syrian and the Iraqi army has given them much more power that we are facing today. You
say defeat of the Syrian and Iraqi army, but the fact of the matter is Kurdish forces known as the Peshmerga, according to one BBC reporter, for example, Paul Wood in Mahmoud, which you have taken back, nevertheless said that people are too scared to go back because they've seen the Kurdish forces just melting away.
Well, like I said, they were as an organization, after taking all the weapon from the Syrian and the Iraqi army, they have become a much stronger organization. And now they are outgunning the Peshmergas. And as a result of the power, the firepower that they had an upper hand in some of the battlefields. They managed to take some of the towns and villages that were far away from the mainland of Kurdistan, for example, in Sinjar. And after coming there, then of course they launched attacks in different parts of Kurdistan, taking towns of Mahmoud and Gwer. But then Peshmergas actually, they stopped them where they were and pushed them back and retaken these towns and villages. And the situation right now, we are in constant fighting, and the battle is going on in different parts of the engagement line between us and them. We are sharing a 1,050-kilometer border with ISIS, and with all the weapons that they seized from the Iraqi military, they are able to bring most of those weapons to these front lines to fight the Peshmergas. The problem is that the Peshmergas do not have the same kind of weapon to fight back.
I'll ask you about that in a moment, but first of all, since June, as you say, the jihadists have made huge gains. They've seized about a quarter of the territory of Iraq. There you are, head of intelligence and security for the Kurds in Iraq. Your intelligence was inadequate. You were taken by surprise, you say. Shouldn't you have known better the capabilities that the Islamists had?
We knew about their intention. We had good information about ISIS when they moved down south to the southern part of Mosul. We communicated with the Iraqi government at the time, and we warned that the ISIS is intending to enter Mosul. Unfortunately, Baghdad was not very responsive, and they did not want our cooperation at the time until they took Mosul. When they took Mosul, And 5 divisions of the Iraqi army left their posts and left their guns, and that really is the surprising point for us. Otherwise,
but it's not just the Iraqis, is it? Mr. Barazzani, it's not just the Iraqi intelligence in Baghdad, which was a failure. President Obama said that on August the 9th, there is no doubt that the ISIL's advance, their movement over the last several months, has been more rapid than the intelligence estimates and expectations of policymakers both in and outside of Iraq. Even American intelligence failed.
I wouldn't say it's a failure, but I think that everybody underestimated the power of ISIS. But I think the turning point for ISIS was when they managed to wipe out all these units of the Iraqi military in and around Mosul less than 48 hours. That gave them much more power, and nobody anticipated such a quick victory for ISIS.
The United States is giving you arms, ammunition, artillery. The French also are going to be giving you arms. Is that going to be enough? Can it then be the Peshmergas, the Kurds, who can rescue Iraq?
Well, everything that we have received so far is not sufficient enough. We have received some ammunition and some light machine guns, but nothing as effective as we are asking for. So we hope that they will reconsider and try to equip Peshmergas with heavy armament that would be more effective in terms of fighting ISIS and hopefully defeating them.
You know, the United States, of course, Chuck Hagel, the Defense Secretary, has said that there are 130 American military members on the ground giving the Iraqis advice on how to tackle this jihadist threat, but they say there'll be no more help than that. There are not going to be combat troops. And you say that you are able to do the job without combat troops from outside. Are you sure of that?
Yes, as long as they continue providing their strikes and expanding their strikes against the critical targets of ISIS and provide us with the right armament, I am sure that we can do the job without having to ask any more soldiers from elsewhere to come. We don't need soldiers, like I said. We need armaments and then having the airstrikes to continue.
You know, there is some reticence in some quarters that if you arm the Kurds, you are favouring one faction in Iraq over other sides. And when this question was put to Colonel Cedric Layton, retired intelligence and former member of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, he said that the US is certainly choosing the Kurdish side. There is a danger in that if we are not careful, we could very much bring about the de facto partition of the Iraqi state. That is a legitimate concern, isn't it?
Well, let me make a point here. Peshmergas, in fact, as a part of the overall defense policy of Iraq, were deprived of receiving any military aid from the Iraqi government or from anyone, anywhere else. Peshmergas had the duty to protect Kurdistan, but when it comes to rights of arming the Peshmergas or even paying the Peshmergas, the Iraqi government was reluctant to provide those kinds of support to Peshmergas. It is our right to be armed to protect this part of Kurdistan. And in fact, for any political decisions that Kurdistan will make or has made, it is not going to use military force to enforce their decision, achieving their goals by violence or military means.
But who do you think you are fighting for? To protect the 6.5 million people who live in your autonomous region, or to defend the whole of Iraq against the jihadists? Which is it?
We are fighting on behalf of the world, not just for Iraq. We are fighting on behalf of the world. This is an organization that does not recognize any borders, does not have any respect for human rights, does not have any respect for religious or ethnic minorities. We now are hosting 1.2 million IDPs, more than 250,000 Syrian refugees, more than 100,000 Christians that have fled from different parts of the country and now are here in Kurdistan, and tens of thousands of other minorities and people, and even Sunni Muslims and Arabs that are now in Kurdistan. So all these people have come to Kurdistan to feel safe, and it's our responsibility to protect all these people, to protect Kurdistan region, and to also contribute to a better situation to Iraq. And as I said, you know, this is a fight, this is a war that we are fighting on behalf of the entire region, the entire world.
And for the whole of Iraq?
And all of Iraq, yes.
Now, the Kurds have obviously made no pretense that they have had huge issues with the Prime Minister, Nouri al-Maliki, who's been in power for about 8 years. You've made your animosity towards him quite clear, and he is seen as a divisive figure by many in the international community. So now the new President of Iraq, also a Kurd, President Fuad Massoum, has nominated a new person from Mr al-Maliki's bloc, Haydar al-Abadi, to be Prime Minister. Is that something you totally welcome? Is this a man that you, Kurds, can do business with?
I hope that this will be a turning point for a positive change in the country. There is not a personal problem between between Kurdistan or Baghdad or any individuals. There is a problem of the system in the country. And if you look at what happened in the past, the former prime minister in Iraq did not implement the constitution, and he was very subjective in terms of dealing with the articles of the constitution. Everything that was very important to the Kurds, like implementation of the Article 140, which deals with the disputed territories, or the arming of the Peshmergas, or the budget of Kurdistan region, or the oil and gas law. All of these issues were hanging, and they did not implement these articles of the constitution. That led to deterioration of the relations between Erbil and Baghdad. So our problem is really not with an individual, it's with a system. We hope that there will be a different system in Baghdad that would accept the power sharing, that would include all main components of the country in the next government. The Sunnis were outcasted, the Kurds were ignored and marginalized systematically. So here, if the new prime minister is coming up with a new plan, with a new agenda that would include all components of this country, and is willing to share power with everybody, and is committed to implement the constitution, I believe there would be a good future for the country and for the cooperation between Erbil and Baghdad.
Will that make it less likely then that the Kurds in northern Iraq will not press for independence?
The self-determination for the Kurds is a God-given right to the Kurdish people, and it depends on how the situation will evolve in the future. But in terms of whether or not the Kurds will still be thinking of independence, I must tell you that every Kurd in their heart believe that they should have the right of self-determination and make their own choice of how they want to live.
Well, self-determination, autonomy, quite different from independence, because of course you are the son of Masroor Barzani, who is the president of the Kurdish regional government in Erbil. And you know, when he has been urged to join a unity government, as he was in late July by John Kerry, your father says that after recent events in Iraq, it has been proven that the Kurdish people could seize the opportunity now. The Kurdistan people should now determine their future. Do you think that you want to stay or go from Iraq completely, become independent?
Well, let's look at the fact. We are in a country that the Baghdad or Iraqi government does not control all of it. We are neighbors with ISIS, not with Baghdad. We share 1,050 kilometers border with ISIS. There is tension between Shias and Sunnis. A new government has not been formed. So let's see how all the situation will lead us to a better Iraq. If we accepted to be a part of this country according to the constitution, to be a federal pluralistic country. If this country is going to be the country for all, if everybody feels safe and secure, and there is less tension between the Shias and the Sunnis, the Kurds are not going to be the ones, let's say, making more problems. It is not the Kurds that has fallen the country apart. The country is practically divided into 3 different parts anyway. It is the mere responsibility of the Kurds to protect their citizens and their territories. So that will remain to be seen. We have to see how successful Baghdad will be to include the Kurds and Sunnis in the next government. If not, the Kurds will certainly not watch ISIS to be partners in this country, and they have to make decisions to protect their land and their people.
So you're saying there that it's up to Baghdad and the other elements in Iraqi society to make unity attractive, but the fact of the matter is you have already been demonstrating in your region a great deal of independence when it comes, for instance, to oil. You're looking to sell your oil directly to other countries through the pipeline to Turkey, for instance, and also making deals with oil traders and oil companies. And the United States has actually put pressure on you not to do that, and on companies not to buy oil directly from you, but to buy it from the central authorities in Baghdad.
Kurdistan or KRG has not done anything out of the Constitution. The Constitution very clearly states how to deal with the oil and gas. All the old fields are going to be managed in coordination by the federal government in coordination with the regions. All the new fields are going to be managed, controlled by the regional government in coordination with the federal government. The federal government does not come forward to deal with the KRG to settle this problem. By the way, Iraq does not have a law to say that there is something legal or illegal by the Kurds. Still, there is the old regime's law in place in Iraq. So Iraq does not have a law to accuse the KRG that they are doing anything illegal. And according to the Constitution, everything that the KRG is doing is completely in line with the Constitution. In terms of the security and Peshmergas and everything else that the KRG has done, they have done it exactly as the Constitution has allowed them to do. But unfortunately, all the successes that we have seen in Baghdad did not let Baghdad to, in Kurdistan, was not enough to encourage Baghdad to support Kurdistan. If in fact they wanted to have Kurdistan remain where they are because they were not able to be as successful as Kurdistan.
But you know, the fact of the matter is your big supporters, your big allies, the United States, have made it clear they want you to remain within a united Iraq. 24th of July, one example, the US Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for the Near East, Brett McGurk, said that the best way to go is for the Kurdish region to stay inside Iraq's constitutional framework.
The Constitution says very clearly that implementation of this Constitution is the guarantee for the unity of the country. The Constitution has not been respected and has not been implemented. So the Kurds have the right to make the decision that is best suitable for their people. However, we have to go beyond theoretical solutions to the problems in Iraq. There are some serious problems that have to be addressed, and there has to be brave decisions made. There is no trust between different components of this country. They don't trust each other, and everybody is afraid that the other side is going to marginalize or to retaliate against the other. So if anyone wants to have a permanent solution for Iraq, they have to talk seriously to all Sunnis, Kurds and Shias, and see what is the common ground and the common denominator that will all be comfortable living together. If that is in the form of federation, or if it is in the form of confederation or full separation. But any outside theoretical solution is not going to solve the problem. In fact, it's going to make it more complicated.
Now, you've got these issues all going on in Iraq, but the matter that's getting a great deal of attention, of course, is this terrible humanitarian crisis. You have explained that you are playing host to many people fleeing persecution and violence from the jihadists. You have limited resources to help. We've heard dreadful stories about especially the Yazidis fleeing the kind of violence from the jihadists. What can you tell us about the humanitarian situation of those thousands of people stranded in the mountains?
Well, like you know, thousands of families that managed to escape to go to the mountains are now there, but they are protected by the units of the Peshmergas that remained and stayed with them. In fact, they have stopped ISIS from chasing them to the mountains. But they were short of food and water. And thankfully, the United States has made a decision to airdrop aid to those people, and lately the UK has also contributed to that, and some other European countries, we understand, are contributing to providing aid to those people in the mountain. But these are not the only ones that are in trouble. There are still several other villages and towns around the mountain that are surrounded by the ISIS and are threatened to be persecuted. So there is a desperate need for humanitarian aid for those people and their evacuation to safety, and also airstrikes and military action taken against those ISIS units who are in and around the area, surrounding those villages and towns. And that is in Shangar. In fact, in other towns and villages close to Mosul, around Mosul, thousands of Christian families have also fled to Kurdistan to feel safer and more secure in those areas. And ISIS is not going to stop, and they will try to come to all of the areas if they can. So it's our responsibility to stop them if we can, but we certainly need both humanitarian aid for these refugees that are, or IDPs, and also military aid to stop ISIS from advancing.
Finally and briefly, the jihadist ISIS assault, the political crisis in the central government in Baghdad, the humanitarian crisis. Can the Iraq, as we all know it, survive all this?
I hope it will survive in one form or another, because failure to failure and being defeated by ISIS is going to be a disaster, and is going to create a much bigger problem for the region and the world. You know that ISIS is an organization that has attracted foreign fighters from all over the world, and these people are not going to stay here in Iraq. They will grow stronger, and they will go back to their countries of origin and pose the same sort of threat to those countries. If they succeed in Iraq, they're just going to be a much bigger problem for the world to deal with it later.
Masrouor Baarzani in Erbil, thank you very much indeed for coming on Hard Talk.